Peace and blessings. Give some people some time here to roll in, and then we can get started. Hoping that everybody is doing well. It's been a busy weekend, but settling back into the routine. I'm excited for today's episode. It's gonna be a full one, but a good one. All right. All right, so today we're talking about escaping the matrix, right? But I want to start with recapping last week's lecture, which was on the black mind and popular media. And I was really talking about our relationship to technology, our relationship to things like social media, things like streaming services, and how that affects our minds as black people. But when it comes to, these technologies, they all go back down to the simplest form of, computer science, which is built upon zeros and ones, right? And then from there, we get these programs that are the behind the scenes design of the apps and the services that we use, right? Like, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, for example, Netflix, things like that. But the important thing to realize with those things as it relates to today's episode, The Matrix, is that those are manifestations of the Matrix, right? And I want to give a disclaimer for today. Like I was saying, it's going to be a full episode. Like, it's going to be a lot of content involved, a lot of information involved. But in no way, shape, or form is this really a comprehensive look at what the Matrix is in depth. I think there are many different ways to look at it. And within the confines of one, live video like this, just going to do my best to give where it is that I'm at with it right now, and what I think we should be looking towards when it comes to escaping the matrix, right? So I want to talk about the movie, right? So in the movie The Matrix, I actually just recently watched The Matrix for the first time. I think this year, I believe, either this year or late last year. But essentially, you have the main character Neo, right, and he becomes aware of the Matrix by the way of Morpheus, right? Morpheus tells him, either you can choose to stay in the Matrix or you can choose to become aware of what it is that is actually going on and help us, set things right, help us escape, help us destroy the Matrix. And, when Neo was brought into the awareness of what was actually going on, he realized that, the reality that he had known all his life, that he had been living, was really just a projection, right? It was an artificial projection of something that really wasn't real. It felt real, smelt real, right? He was living his life as it was, but he came into the awareness that, it was really an illusion, and that a lot of the limitations that one would put on themselves in that environment really didn't exist. But as he became as he came into this awareness, he then, had to face the conflicts with the opposing energies, trying to, subdue their efforts, right? So when it comes to the movie, it is this coming into awareness of, that the reality that you're living is not real, and that there is something deeper, that there is something sinister going on behind the scenes that needs to be reconciled, right? I want to take the time now to discuss this concept of, pre-colonial consciousness, or before, the world got into a place where, Europeans are colonizing the world and enslaving Africans, etc. What was the state of consciousness that ancient peoples were in before the influence of colonialism? And that state of consciousness was one that was in alignment with nature. And I've spoken about this before, I've spoken about it on other videos. But when it comes to this pre-colonial consciousness, it's really about a state of consciousness that was developed in close alignment with nature. It's a state of consciousness that was developed alongside the presence of melanin, neuromelanin in our nervous system, and melanin inside our organs, but also the concept of eumelanin, or skin pigmentation, right? So these ancient African peoples, as they were exploring the world and living in these natural environments, were just observing nature and how to align themselves with it, how to, improve their lives, how to better become aware of themselves and, the things around them within that context. And, as these people would develop, the African worldview would come about, right? The African worldview is using that state of consciousness that we just talked about and becoming conscious, right? Becoming, or I should say, getting to a state of consciousness to where you are making decisions, you are making creative decisions, right? Moving away from, being, an example of it would be moving away from being a hunter-gatherer to then being an agriculturalist, right? Realizing that, okay, if I plant these seeds right here and, I allow nature to take its course, then food is produced for me, right? And then to continue down that line of, okay, making tools to make the process of planting seeds easier, right? So now the African worldview becomes this way of looking at the world and yourself, where you become to seek synergy with nature. Not only are you observing, the grandness of it and like the beauty of it and the abundance of it, but now you're like, okay, I'm realizing this energy within myself to be able to synergize with it, to be able to create something better than just nature or just me, but rather us working in harmony, right? Nature and man working in harmony. And, from there is how we get civilization. Like, those are the foundations to how we get civilizations like ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, right? Or Kush and, or present day Ethiopia, Sudan, right? It's how we get the Dogon people of West Africa, who were so advanced in their observation of stars, right, and the celestial bodies, right? It's how we get the people like the Moors, who would become the keepers of, the keepers and the tradesmen, as it related to all of the African wisdom that was developed, all of the things that we would create. The Moors would be the keepers of that, the protector of that, right? So, we have these different civilizations that were formed from the African worldview, which is again this worldview that is in synergy with nature, right? Where, we run into issues is the European mind, which I characterize in alignment with a perversion of nature. Okay. As I've, studied through my studies, the way that the human story has gone from an anthropological perspective is that early Africans, when they began to migrate to different lands on the earth, right, there was a period in time where Africans would journey up into the northern regions of what we now know as, Eurasia. And those people over millennia would get trapped by an ice age, right? And being trapped in this environment with, lack of sunlight, harsh environment as far as the weather goes, and then like not a great abundance of food sources, right? So not only were these people going through that psychologically, but their bodies began to change, right? The pigment of their skin began to go away. Their hair began to straighten, right? And you have these changes that take place over thousands of years for that human being to survive the environment that it was in, right? But like I said, psychologically, socially, this is where we get concepts of, barbarianism, where these people, now didn't know how to clean themselves, or, were engaging in things like incest or cannibalism, some of the things that we would consider the sickest of things of, humanity, have its roots in like that state of mind where your situation, your physical situation is so dire that the higher level spiritual thought is not an option. That there's so much pressure being exerted on your body and on your psyche that you fall into, this barbarianism or this lower level animalistic way of being. And as time would progress, where, the ice age would subside, and now you had a European stock of human beings, and you had, Africans in other parts of the globe, right? When these people would come together again, there was this difference in psychology, right? Where the European mind had this resistance to nature, and I would say rightfully so. Like living in those type of conditions, there was a resistance to nature and what it represented. So that when you have a melanated person or melanated people interacting with these Europeans, right, who have a resistance to nature, the melanated people represent everything that is abundant and good about nature. But if that European mind and like their psyche, right, and I'm talking about like from a generational perspective, like that psyche did not experience that same abundance, or had spent so long in a period of not experiencing that same abundance. So that's where these feelings of like jealousy and envy and like intimidation come into play. Hence how we get, the chain of events of enslavement, right? And like I said, like obviously with the constraints of one video, like I have to be crude in what it is I'm talking about, like crude in my assessment of history here, because that the journey of time that I'm talking about is obviously more nuanced. But in terms of setting the foundations of this conversation, this is what I'm talking about. So the key here is the difference between the European mind and the African mind. The European mind being in a state, or the worldview, I should say, the European worldview being one that is against nature, that seeks to control nature, that seeks to deny the nature in oneself. The African mind being the one that seeks the synergy with nature, the harmony with nature, right? And that lives in the abundance of nature, the gratitude of it. So we have these opposing worldviews, okay? And when we're defining the matrix in today's world, as you know, all of us know, slavery happened and Africans were brought over here. Segregation, civil rights. I'm sure all of us have gotten the basics of that history, right? But when it comes to the matrix and what it is, that European way of thinking has been imposed upon the African way of thinking, right? So that now you are wearing somebody else's glasses. You are wearing somebody else's worldview. You are wearing somebody else's way, value system. So that now what you're experiencing is this cognitive dissonance, or this frustration on a spiritual level, because you're not living with the essence of how you're supposed to be. You're not living in alignment with the essence of what you embody. You know what I'm saying? If you have melanated skin, that is a genetic and biological trait that allows you to absorb the sun, that allows you to absorb the light, heat, sound, energy more than someone who is not as pigmented in the skin, right? And like I said, everybody has melanin within their body, but I'm saying those of us who are pigmented and melanated in our skin, to me, are the people who are supposed to keep nature, as we talked about in the lecture about melanin. We talked about how melanin is a carbon-based molecule, and that carbon and melanin are both responsible for stabilizing, harmonizing, right? So taking that train of thought, those of us who have melanated skin, I'm saying, are the ones who are supposed to balance and stabilize not only ourselves with nature, but our family, our communities, and ultimately the human family, because there is one race, the human race. But I'm saying that the role of melanated people, African people, black people, whatever it is that, we may call ourselves around the world, is to be in alignment with nature. It is to have the African worldview. In actuality, the African worldview is the most humane worldview. It is the true, human worldview in alignment with nature. When you look at the spiritual philosophies of Africa and African peoples around the world, not only do you see the intelligence in what has been left, but those sciences, that spiritual technology, was the roots of things like math and science, and the starting of universities in Europe, right? Those were the hands and the minds who were masterfully handling and dealing with the agriculture over here, in the States as enslaved people. Right? These were the people who were healing and feeding and tending to the children of, these Europeans. Right? So I'm saying that the African worldview and the African mind is the state of mind that you want to be in. But the issue is that, like I said, the European mind is being superimposed on top of ours. And the way that I see that is I see that because it's not a thing of like white people versus black people to me. Like I said, it's more like a psychological framework that I'm talking about. Right? The psychological framework that I'm defining as the European mind or the European worldview is one that is trying to avoid karma. And when I say karma, I'm talking about the cycles of nature. What goes around comes around, right? In order to avoid the karma or avoid the cycles of nature, they superimpose their mind on top of the African mind so that the African body can take on the weight. It can take on, the punishment. And if we look at chattel slavery, that is what it was. They didn't want to do the work of tending the land. They wanted to reap the benefits. So what did they do? They commandeered the black body and made the black body do all the workings, right? It made the black body carry out the intentions of the white mind. That is the system that, we live in. That is the roots of, this country. So we're living in this holographic reality, right? That is what I'm referring to when I'm saying that one worldview is superimposed on top of another, right? So if we're going to back to the movie of the Matrix, how Neo was plugged up into the machine with the thing in the back of his head, and that is what was creating the images. I'm saying that your phone, your laptop, your tablet, the news, your routine at work, traffic, going through traffic lights every day, these cycles and just the essence of what it is to live here is that cord in the back of your head keeping you engaged, keeping you playing the same loops, right? Living in the same state of, stress, to say the least, constant stress. But that state, that this holographic reality, this man-made reality, yes, it exists and we feel it and we live it, and, we have to engage in it, in order to live with how it is that we know how to do that at this point. But it is not nature. It is not really the natural way of things when you sit back and you pay attention or when you become aware. In order to escape the matrix, you must first become aware of what it is that even is. What does that look like? And the important thing to realize about why the matrix works, or how it is that we could find ourselves in this type of situation, it is because the universe is mental. That is one of the laws of nature as it relates to the ancient Egyptian or the Kemetic legacy. That's the first law of the universe, that the universe is mental. So that it is our minds, it is the profound technology of the brain and the consciousness that is allowed to express itself through the brain that controls everything that you experience. Literally, like your senses have to go through your brain, and and everything that you know has to happen in your brain. You know, you're not the body, you are the consciousness that inhabits the brain, which controls the body. But if your worldview, if the program that you're running on is a program that has been overwritten or written over the program of nature or the program that you were born to carry out, and that's the only thing that you ever know, that's the only thing that you ever engage with, that's the thing that is constantly presented to you through social media and streaming services and, all of the things that I talked about, the 9 to 5, the rat race, the living the paycheck to paycheck, right? The news, politics, voting. When we're constantly, everything about our lives is simply playing into this thing, you know what I'm saying? Bills, taxes, everything about our life is constantly playing into this program. That is what will control our mind. You know what I'm saying? And the key thing with that is to realize that I guess the key point that I'm bringing up here is to bring awareness to just how vast the matrix is, just how interwoven into everything it is. Like every single thing that you do is affected by it. So then one may ask, well, what is the point? Like, why fight it? How can I even bring myself to fight it? How can I even escape it if it's everything around me? And I think that is where a lot of our people, find themselves in hopelessness or complacency or, just delving into things, like violence and drugs and alcoholism, because of that notion. It may not be necessarily a conscious thought that someone is having day to day, but after living a life like that, it's like, what else is there to do besides, play along, essentially? And I want to take a quick intermission right now before I get into the next part of this presentation, just to, allow our minds to settle a bit, and just let those thoughts simmer for a second. All right. So we'll be back in a minute here. Okay. The next concept here that I want to emphasize, I think it's become a popular term nowadays, and that is the term of, gaslighting. So I want us to take a look at the definition of gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which one entity makes another entity question their own reality, memories, or perceptions. The goal of gaslighting is to gain control over the other entity by making them doubt themselves, often leading to confusion, self doubt, and loss of confidence. Now, when I read that, you know, that is exactly what it is I'm talking about. We are caught up in this psychological game that has, because remember, it is the European worldview imposed on top of the African worldview. The African worldview still exists. The word of God still exists. The laws of nature still exist, and they will continue to exist. They existed before humanity, and they will exist after humanity. So it is a psychological game. It is manipulation. It is a illusion. No matter how overwhelming it may seem, no matter how interconnected and interwoven into everything about our reality that the so-called matrix may be, the African worldview is always yours to attain. You are a melanated person. It is your birthright. All you have to do is step outside and get in the sun and focus your intention on bringing it about. It could be as simple as that, right? To get up from your desk at work, or to get off from work and simply go outside, go by a river, get some sunlight, to eat some fruit, to drink some herbs, to honor your ancestors, venerate your ancestors. We always have access to the African worldview. It is just, it's going to come down to when are we going to stop being confused, allowing ourselves to be confused? When are we going to stop doubting ourselves? And when are we going to have the confidence in what it means to be an African person, truly? When are we going to release the mental shackles, right? And allow ourselves to be who it is that we are? When are you going to choose to stand in your power? That's really the only question here. The only way that the Matrix works is through manipulating our minds. But if you become conscious of yourself and therefore take control of your mind, only the things that you allow in your mind will affect you. You have a choice and you have the power. Understand? So to continue to, break down just, the essence of our discussion here, the essence of the Matrix is the European mind avoiding or trying to control nature, right? It is that mindset, that way of looking at the world, those glasses that are directly opposed to nature. And going off of that metaphor, imagine if you have those glasses on, right? You have these glasses that are directly opposed to nature. So that when you look in the mirror and you're this embodiment of nature, every time you look at yourself, every time you're thinking about yourself, this is where you hear this negative self-talk, you know. But to continue, the hologram of it, the manifestation of it, or like the actual illusion that we're living in, are these weapons of mass distraction, right? So the rat race, like I was talking about, that cycle of being, which has been around, I would say, before, like computer technology, but just the simple fact of industrialization in the workforce, right? The labor force, you know, the assembly line from elementary school to high school to college to the workforce, right? Of tax-paying citizens. Then we have the media today, which is a big thing through the phones and, you know, the social media. And then we have these outlets where we're, you know, able to escape, whether that be through drugs, you know, alcohol, sex, and even spirituality in some cases, you know, because it is a thing to escape the work that needs to be done, you know, and relying on some savior that is really you, the essence of who you are. And the way that this affects the melanated people on the earth is that we are then gaslit into taking on the karma or the consequences that is really supposed to be directed towards the European mind, the manifestation of it. And the consequence that I'm talking about when it comes to the European mind, because like I said, I'm not necessarily talking about a people necessarily. I think that there are European people who carry that, who embody this mindset and worldview. I think that all European people benefit from the system that is in place, you know, if not simply by comparison to other races. But what I'm saying is the consequences are that this system cannot exist for much longer. It's breaking down and it's about to crash. The illusion and the game that they've been playing, it cannot sustain itself because it is not natural. Something that is not natural will be purged from a natural body because it can't be digested. And the role that we play in the earth, you know, as I see it, melanated people is we are here to stabilize. We are here to stabilize, number one, ourselves, stabilize our families, stabilize our communities, and then become unified and stabilized and strong as a diaspora around the world. But it's going to take, you know, work, and it's going to take a choice. Our generational curses are simply a projection of the European mind fighting itself, fighting nature, fighting the creator in an effort to gain control. But when we reorient ourselves to the cycles of nature or the word of God, found in the African worldview or that pre-colonial state of consciousness, we will inherit the earth. And the inheritance of the earth is peaceful presence in the abundance of God's gift. Once we get out of the mind game of lack, right? And self-doubt and inferiority and self-doubt and confusion and lack of confidence, we will be able to exist anywhere. Whether it is in your path, in your cars to exist in an urban city, or, it's in your path to have your own plot of land and, to live off the grid and everything in between. What I'm saying is no matter what environment that you are in as a melanated person, there's no reason within the African worldview as to why you can't thrive. So the name of the game is to release ourselves, right? To escape the matrix. Which brings us to, the point of this video. How do you escape the matrix? What is a practical, set of steps that we can follow as a people to get ourselves out of the matrix? And what I'm about to share, these steps, is the way that I see it. It's the way that, fits within my nature, within my understanding of myself, and just where I'm at in my journey, right? But it looks like this, a practical evolution out of the matrix, right? And we're playing the long game here. Step number 1 is to know yourself. And in our shadow work, right? The shadow work is the process of coming into awareness of yourself. And we talked about this in our How to Be a Gold Digger live lecture. Talked about shadow work. If you don't know yourself, none of this works. If you are unwilling to face yourself, those dark aspects of yourself, those aspects of your own humanity, because remember again the origins of the matrix and like the European mind that I'm talking about, because I'm saying it's not black people against white people. It is that lower animalistic nature that exists in all humans. But if you ignore the darkness where those things fester, where that state of mind festers, then it will continue to latch on to you and control your life. Right? It will continue to be a parasite, a cancer within you. So you have to face yourself first, right? You can't escape. You can't escape. Through money or progress in life and within the matrix. It's not gonna bring you happiness when your body knows, when your spirit knows what it truly wants. So the first step is to learn and heal yourself. Step number 2 is to learn the game. Capitalism. When it comes to the matrix, I would say that if there's one term that we would use to characterize how it works, it would be capitalism. And like I said, capitalism began with industrialization. Well, capitalism began with the enslavement of black peoples, right? Chattel slavery to create a trade system of resources and people, right, around the world. And then the formation of colonies and, that whole thing. But then we got industrialization, the building of these corporations, Now today we have the technological age, the information age, where capitalism is, online businesses and streaming services, content creation, right? But then we have everything in between, like real estate and, sales, whether that be online or brick and mortar, right? But capitalism, business, free enterprise. I don't think we can avoid learning the game. Once you become aware of yourself and who you are, if you really want to escape, like if you want to live something different, we have to learn the game. Like we actually have to learn how to navigate the system in order to find an exit somewhere. You know what I'm saying? We can't just like sit where we are and, meditate and kumbaya. You know what I'm saying? Like if you want to actually escape, you know what I'm saying, and not experience it at all, there's a journey that needs to take place. And that journey is capitalism. And when you structure yourself to play this game, or in other words, you organize yourself as a business, you start an LLC, right? You begin marketing yourself, building a personal brand, right? And start to generate the cash flow that comes along with that, right? You build these skills that generate this cash flow that allow you to get out of that 9 to 5, that allow you to build up a savings. Then the next step would be to invest the profits in your passions, right? So once we've got to know ourselves, we know who we are, what we've gone through, we should have picked up somewhere along the way what it is that we care about, truly. What it is that we're passionate about. Like if we could do one thing, you should have a good idea of what that is, right? And you've learned the game of capitalism, and now you can structure yourself a business. You can write your a mission and vision statement, right? You can come up with a name for an LLC, right? And then you can begin to build a personal brand and a business brand around the things that you care about. And as that generates cash flow for you, we then invest those profits into living more of your passions, right? Living in more alignment with your nature, what it is that you're naturally inclined to do. That is what God put you here to do, or that is the voice of God within you. Those things that you're passionate about, that you really care about, that you really want to do, that make you happy, like that is the life that you're supposed to live. The things that bring you peace and solace, the lifestyle that you imagine, like, man, if I could just do this, like that is the life that you're supposed to live. Like do that. Like that's what you're supposed to do, right? The next step as we begin to do this as individuals and, eventually with our families, and we teach our family these skills, right? Our communities begin to build and expand upon these skills, upon our passions, upon our gifts, upon our creative genius. We then need to look into organizing politically. Politics and the government is the regulatory apparatus of business. And I will go as far to say that business is the regulatory apparatus of government, in the sense that businesses are the ones who are funding, you know, these governmental, operations. But if we as a people would like to build the thing that I think really gets us in the Matrix, one of the greatest weapons of the Matrix is the legalese of it all, right? You have to have all of these government documents in check. You have to, have certain paperwork to get into certain things. You have to have a license to do this particular thing. You have to have a degree to get this job. And then when it comes to keeping you in check, or regulatory things, now you have like tax law that you need to be concerned with. And you have to fill out these IRS forms, right? You want to protect your assets. Well, now you need to structure a trust, and you need to have, that written properly. So there's a lot of loops and holes and barriers by the way of this like legalese, the language of the legal world, but I would extend legalese out to just like the jargon of professional world in general, yeah, professional worlds in general. I just had a bit of deja vu there. But the professional world in general, like there's these terms and these words of the English language that are designed to confine us in different places. So it becomes important for at least some of us to understand and be able to navigate those languages so that we can come together. And that has always been the great fall of the melanated person, is the inability to work together in these times, but in ancient times as well. European people were never able to overthrow African people without African people, you know, having issues internally, right? Having vulnerabilities internally, infighting. We need to get to a place in the way that we create and the businesses that we begin, because it's open with the internet and the technology. It is open for you to express and to build virtually anything that you would like to. So if you care about a particular issue, and you build yourself around that, I'm saying, and you are able to gain economic freedom and agency around that, that then gives you the ability to invest in things that need to happen collectively, right? Everybody can have their own things that they believe in, but we need to have political organization if we seek to sustain ourselves and protect ourselves outside of the matrix. And the reality is, I think that some of us may not ever want to leave the matrix or the game of it all. Some of us may be the ones building the bridge between the matrix and, a natural life. And then there are some of us who are just here to live the natural life, who are just here to be, in the full essence of the spirit. But no matter where you exist along that spectrum, if we're going to sustain ourselves and survive and continue to keep ourselves out of that psychological game, we're going to have to get over our differences and find common ground. I believe that common ground, is nature. I mean, the common ground for all human beings should be nature, because without, the quality of nature, none of us will live. So my thing is that if you doing something that honors your nature, that is providing for your family and for them to be in their natural state, a state of peace, right? If you're doing things within your community that are positive and creative, life-bringing, if you're doing things around the world that are about humanity, about healing nature, about, the environment, if you're in any of these places doing the things that pertain to the spirit or the mind, there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to work together. Understand? And once we have a sovereign black economy, so that means an internally regulated system of exchanging value between each other, right? How we can all have our separate entities, if that's what, anyone desires. But to have that system between us, to be able to exchange value, have a labor force, have, medical system, have an education system, you know, have a logistical system and agricultural system to where we can have food and shelter, the exchange of skills, right? So I'm saying that a sovereign black economy is that power, it is that state that will allow us to exist outside the matrix. Like, to me, black people outside of the matrix is a sovereign black economy, because within that economy, if we choose to say that within these walls, within these not necessarily physical walls, but within the walls of our inner workings as a diaspora, if we don't want to use money as a form of exchange, or if we don't want people's lives to depend on, whether or not they got a check or money to give, then we could choose not to do that. We could choose to barter and to exchange labor. And I think that we are intelligent enough to do that, in a organized fashion, and still be able to operate and interact with the world in a sense of, because I don't see the rest of the world getting rid of currency or that way of being. And, I can't really speak to what will happen globally at this point in my life, because I simply don't have enough information. But like I said, what it is that I'm presenting is about the long game. These are things to think about. I would say the things that are really pertinent to today, right now, what you need to be doing is step number one and step number two. Because at the very least, it's mandatory for you to know yourself, right? That's mandatory. But if you at least understand the game of capitalism, you can work your job and still be able to set yourself up in a way to where you're not so stressed. You understand? You can still set yourself up in such a way where you're not being siphoned every day. And where your peace may just be you in a home, you in a home with a family, right? That is your highest expression of what the Most High has for you. That's important. But I think, steps 3 to 6 are really this larger scale, big picture thinking of like, how do we organize ourselves as a people outside of the matrix? But I think as individuals with just steps number 1 and 2, I think you will be able to exist in a state where you're not subject to the perils of the matrix, right? And that's important, just to have that space within ourselves and within our homes to simply be as we are in any given moment. That should be everybody's main priority, because only from there can we really give to others, right? Only from that state of stability within our own situation can we give to others, and really work in harmony with others, right? But I've talked about a lot of information here, and you know I've given a lot of insight on different areas of the situation that I'm talking about. The matrix, this concept of the matrix. So what I would like to do to close out is I'm going to perform a spoken word piece that really wraps all of these concepts that I'm talking about together in a creative way. And I'm doing this to re-emphasize and reiterate the importance of art and artist, because I believe that in listening to this piece, everything that I've talked about thus far, you will be able to journey into deeper understanding of what it is that I'm saying, where it is I'm coming from. You will be able to experience within yourself how it is that you actually feel about what I'm saying, as opposed to, thinking and digesting what it is that I'm saying, right? The importance of art is that it creates an experience, or it creates an environment for an experience to take place, right? So I'm gonna take a second here and, you know, reset before I perform, and we can close out on this. This piece is called Demands. You can be anything you want, just not yourself, nigga. Get your degree so we can put you on a shelf, nigga. Come work for me, pension plan, build your wealth, nigga. You should rent, don't buy land and stretch yourself, nigga. Stay in a box, don't expand and stress yourself, nigga. But look, here's a raise, a higher shelf, nigga. Fuck your history, it should stay a mystery. I got what you need, play it safe before you in too deep. If you knew your story, you would never work for me. Let me tell your dumb ass just how much you really worth to me. Back in the day, we seen y'all building pyramids. Agriculture, gold in abundance, happy black kids. So we learned from you, studied at your feet, mixed some shit around, took it back to Rome and Greece. Big boss ego was feeling real fragile. He said it wasn't safe until we knew we had you. Truth is, he was scared when we told him about y'all power, jealousy. He wanted what y'all had to be ours. We created Christianity to take y'all power. God outside of you. And if you sin, you get devoured. But y'all still had power. So we called it magic. Said that's the devil's work and God punished with a madness. Put fear in your minds and then we shipped it to the masses. Make sure your savior white so you respect our Jesuit badges. We used your own stories against you. Cause if y'all fought yourselves, we could just come in and rinse you. With the blood of Jesus, confusion the mark of the sinful. But we would never mention that we were the ones who planted that shit inside y'all system. Raped y'all mothers, beat y'all fathers, and killed y'all sisters. Then trained y'all to think that that's just life inside the system. But I mean, listen, we ended slavery. So you owed me, you still had to pay me. You uncivilized thing still had to raise me. Because after all your work, we still felt like babies. gave you a say in low wages, politics and industry with a preferred segregation. And fuck reparations, America is great because it's built on erasure. If I plead guilty, I can't ask for immunity. In my delusion, there's serenity. Red lines, prisons, drug-infested communities, broken families, violence. What the fuck that got to do with me? How is that my problem? Why would I fix what's putting money in my pockets? Why loosen my grip when y'all fixing all my problems? If we let y'all free, this whole country loses posture. Truth is, you got godlike energy. But in your desperation, you feed me and my family. That's why I can never tell you exactly what you mean to me. 'Cause if you knew your power, I can't imagine what that mean for me. So that concludes today's lecture. I would rather questions be left in the comments. I think this is one that you may want to watch a couple of times, a few times, and leave questions, in the comments for me to address in separate videos. But I think that I've left enough information here, yeah, to just begin to produce thought, you know, something to think about. It's definitely a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot that goes into our situation. But at the end of the day, the simple thing that we need to be doing is learning about ourselves, knowing yourself. From there, everything will be revealed to you in time, you know. So with that said, wishing everybody peace and blessings and healing and prosperity. And in regards to the information that I shared along the lines of capitalism and business, that will be the focus of some of my next videos. That realm of things being that I have talked mostly about the spiritual awakening process and the spiritual reality. Going to begin transitioning in some of the more material things that we can engage in from the African perspective, from the spiritual perspective. So I'm looking forward to that. But again, peace and blessings to all. Happy healing.